This next lesson that we're going to cover is on transitions and thought patterns. Transitions are very important when you're writing, and it's also important to be able to recognize the different types of transitions when you're reading passages and different things like that, because again, it's all about comprehension and understanding what the author wants you to know. So we're going to talk about 3 different transitions and thought patterns, and I'm going to again once again take you over to the PowerPoint, because I would like to catch my visual learners, and at the same time you will hear me in the background walking you through it, so I can give you an examples on what to look for when you're dealing with transitions. As we said, transitions and thought patterns, this is what this next chapter is about. The reason we want to cover this is because now you've looked at other people, you've looked at their writing and tried to figure out what they want you to know and how to pick up certain things in their writing to help you with your comprehension. Now we'd like to get into the writing part, because whether you know it or not, reading and writing go hand in hand, okay? You need to be able to put together a paragraph as well as to read one and understand what it means. You need to be able to put together a coherent paragraph to where people understand what you're trying to say, okay? So as it says over here, it can be tricky business. We all know that. Some of us love to write and some people dread it. But it doesn't matter if you're doing it for academic purposes or professional purposes. Whatever the reason that you are writing, it is very important that you convey a very clear message to the people that you are writing for, okay? I've had students tell me in the past, why is writing so important? You know, I'm not going to have to write papers on my job. And then what they don't realize is, if you become a supervisor, or you may not even be a supervisor, and you have to put together a report that's going to give information to the next person coming in, then that message has to be conveyed clearly and concisely, so that everything flows and everybody is on the same page, okay? So I understand writing can be tricky, but hopefully with the use of transitions, this will help you in your writing process. And again, you know, I always give keywords from the chapters or from the lessons that we're covering, because if you don't understand what those words mean, it's going to be hard for you to understand the strategy. So transitions are words that establish logical connections between sentences, paragraphs, and sections of your paper. Another way to put it, transitions tell the reader what to do with the information that they have given them. Transitions can also serve as signs to tell the reader how to think and how to react to what they have written. So there are a lot of different ways that you can define transitions. Whichever way works for you, as long as you understand that they establish logical connections between sentences, paragraphs, and sections of your paper. Thought patterns are signaled by using transitions that show logical relationships between ideas and paragraphs, and that's basically what we just said, the definition for transitions. That's the definition. But thought patterns, some of the thought patterns that we're going to deal with in this particular section, we're going to deal with time order, we're going to deal with comparison, we're going to deal with contrast, and then we have a few more, but we're going to pick those up in the next lesson. So right now I'm just going to take you through these 3. I'm going to give you a short definition, and as I always do, and then I'm going to give you an example so you can see what it looks like. Time order is the one that's pretty common sense. Time order is going to show us a chain of events. It's going to show us chronological order. Anything that gives us steps and stages, that's going to deal with time order pattern. Some keywords that you might want to jot down or remember that help us recognize the time order is being used. And again, these are common sense words, once you see them and use them on a regular basis, you'll start to recognize them. After, before, during, first, second, third. Remember we said anything that deals with stages, steps, order, chronological order, then that's going to deal with time. And again, I've included some examples that kind of demonstrate how to recognize these things. This one is just a sentence, and we're going to pick out the key words that show us that it's time related. It says John Wilkes Booth, who led a prominent life as an actor in the years before he assassinated Abraham Lincoln, ultimately died a traitor's death. So this is giving you the order, okay? Before, okay, that's one of our key words, before he assassinated Abraham Lincoln. Ultimately is another time word. So again, if you recognize these time words, then you connect this thought pattern with time order. Here's another example, and I'm not going to read the whole paragraph, but I have highlighted the key words that you will tell us that this is time related. His first notion was during these early years as a teacher, and then eventually. So see, it kind of gives us the steps of Corbin's life as a teacher and what he wanted, and it gave us kind of an order, and eventually kind of sums it up at the end. Now, time words, they still help us. I'm going to give you two sentences. This first one is not wrong, they're not incorrect, but I can show you how what a big difference transitions make. It says, I fill in the answers to the test questions I'm sure I know. I work on the rest of the exam. Now look at this one with just a few transitions. First, I fill in the answers to the test questions I'm sure I know. Then I work on the rest of the exam. So you see the difference in that. When we use transitions, it takes us to the next thought and it connects logically so the reader understands where you are going. Okay? So when you're writing, think about using transitions to help the reader follow you. Remember, you set the direction. You tell the reader what you want them to do. So that's your time. And here's another time related paragraph. And again, I have highlighted the key words that will show you that it's time related. Remember, we said any type of order. This is giving us directions on how to do proper dental flossing. Okay, first you do this, second, third, next, and then. Now, this next thought pattern is comparison, and you have probably used this in your English classes, but knowing the meaning of it and how to recognize it is also important. First of all, the definition of comparison is when you point out the ways in which two or more ideas are alike. Here's an example. Just as we relate to others based on their personality traits, we tend to interact with our personal computers based on their performance. So as you can see, just as would be our comparison keyword, and we're showing how personality traits and personal computers are similar, okay? Because we said comparison points out how two ideas are alike. Another one, another example is this next sentence. Compulsive gambling is an addiction similar in some ways to drug addiction. And as you can see, I've highlighted our keyword, which is similar. And so now we're comparing gambling with drug addiction, because they're both addictions. So we're just saying that these are two ideas that have some similarities. Okay? So comparison, you'll see this again across the curriculum. You may have to compare two authors. You might have to compare two pieces of work. So this is going to help you not just in this class, but in other classes as well. And here are some of the key words that might help you recognize, or when you need to write a paper on comparison and contrast, here are some key words that you can use. And you may want to jot these down. Most of them are, we said that when we have two items that are similar or alike, these words all kind of go with that. They're the same, they resemble, just like, equally. So these are your comparison words, and there are many, many more. These are just a few of them that I put up that you might see. Contrast would be the last one that we're going to discuss, the last thought pattern. We said that comparison is when two things are alike. So we know that contrast is going to point out two ways in which ideas are different or opposite. Here's an example. Women differ from men in their styles of communication. So we're talking about the difference in how women and men communicate. And you've probably heard that many, many times. But our key word is differ, and it shows contrast. Contrast words, again, there are tons of contrast words, although on the other hand, the most obvious one in contrast, different from, yet, however, any word that takes us a different direction is going to show us contrast. This paragraph kind of deals with comparison and contrast, and I just want you to look at the keywords that help us show that it's dealing with comparison and contrast. Although similar, they both do this, and we're talking about yoga and Pilates, how they're similar and how they're different. And I've highlighted again the keywords that can show us the how we compare it and how we show that they contrast. So comparison and contrast, you'll see both of those in this particular paragraph. And again, another way to look at comparison and contrast, short way to remember this: comparison signals similarities, contrast signals differences. But when you have comparison or contrast, just keep in mind you have to have two things. You have to have two things that says this is alike, these two items are alike, or two things that says that will tell you that these two things are different. Okay, so if you're trying to pick out some of the quizzes that I give will ask you, is this comparison or contrast, or is it time related? If you don't have two items that you can see very clearly that are showing likenesses or differences, you know it's not comparison or contrast, so it might be dealing with time. Okay, so you have to remember to ask yourself those questions. Here's another example of comparison. A swarm of locusts looks like a massive dark cloud. So like is our key word, and then you have to ask yourself, what are we comparing? We're comparing the swarm of locusts with the massive dark cloud. And then the next one, surveys show that women who work out of the home and stay-at-home moms are equally concerned about their children's welfare. Equally would be our key word, and then you'd have to determine what's equal. And what they're saying in this sentence is that women who work, we're just as concerned with our children's welfare as the people or the moms who get to stay at home. So that's your comparison. To sum it all up, transitions, they are signs for the reader to tell them how to think and react to what you've written. The thought patterns that we covered time, which we said time deals with steps, stages, chronological order. Comparison is when you have two items that are the same or similar, and contrast gives us two items that are different.